Hi friends, welcome back to another bookish video where I am going to give you some recommendations for Halloween book tropes. No, your color on your screen is not wrong. I am burned. Horribly burned. So unfortunately, this will not be a makeup and books video because my poor face is unable to put on makeup. My skin is screaming. So instead, I'm just going to turn on the ring light and I'm going to hydrate and I'm going to slather myself in some aloe gel and think about the consequences of my poor decisions. The girls I nanny had a cheerleading competition yesterday, and I sat out there for 2 hours without sunscreen, with no shade, knowing that I am glow-in-the-dark pale. And this is the consequences of my actions. And like, look, turn the light off. You can even see where I was wearing sunglasses. Like, insane. So because of the consequences of my actions, I don't get to put on makeup today, so you're just going to listen to me give you book recommendations. PSA, wear sunscreen. So for today, I'm going to be going over 2 tropes. The first trope is going to be dark nature, and I didn't know what to call it, so that's why I just kind of went with dark nature, but it's books that show the dark side of nature. So the first one is going to be Belladonna by Adeline Grace, which is book 1 in a trilogy, and the third book just came out last month, I think, or the month before, and it is so good. If you like historical fiction, read it. If you like Gothic literature, read it. It's almost a Gothic murder mystery retelling of The Secret Garden, where an orphan girl goes to live with her uncle in this creepy Gothic mansion, and there is a sick cousin that she's wanting to heal and save, and in order to do so, she uses the plant belladonna. For several reasons. She can make death appear. She cannot die. Instead, when she takes the poisonous belladonna and gets sick, she summons death to her, and death is like an actual character in this book, and there's almost a love relationship there. So I'm interested to see how that's going to play out in the rest of the series. The next one is Harrow Lake by Kat Ellis. And in this book, a girl is forced to go to the small town where her mother originated from. And things start happening there that are mysterious. And it's almost like the town itself is trying to keep her trapped there. The next recommendation is Wonderland by Zoe Stage. I hope I'm saying that right. She's the author of Baby Teeth, which I loved. If you like creepy kid books, oh, fabulous book. But in Wonderland, it's about a small family. They recently moved to a cabin on the mountain, and mysterious things start happening. They notice that the trees are getting closer to the cabin each day. Things are appearing in the forest. They can't get back to the road, like mist stops them. It's a really thoroughly creepy book. Perfect for wintertime reading, actually, because that's like what it's set in. My next recommendation is Mexican Gothic by Silvia Moreno Garcia. And that book is, again, another Gothic creepy house story where she gets a note from her cousin that her recently married cousin is not doing so well with her husband's family in this house, and she asks the main character, her cousin, to come and stay with her. And her cousin goes, and she gets pulled into this weird, creepy family dynamic, and there's something going on with the house, and her cousin's new husband is creepy, and the sexual vibes are highly inappropriate coming from him. And again, there's something wrong with this house, and she comes to find out it's a fungus that is literally controlling everybody in this house. Like, it gets in their bodies and it infects them and it controls their brain, which is creepy. Then we have Wilder Girls by Rory Power. This is about a boarding school that is on an isolated island. There has been a virulent infection taking over the school, and most of the girls have died. There's only a few left, and they're not allowed to leave the island. Instead, like, the government sends them food and provisions and stuff. Sorry for the angle change, but I feel like, to me, Wilder Girls kind of reminded me of Lord of the Flies by William Golding, like the female version of that, where it's a bunch of girls separated from the mainland, isolated on an island, and they have to figure out how to survive. The last dark nature recommendation is going to be The Girl Who Loved Tom Gordon by Stephen King. Again, I can find a Stephen King recommendation for damn near any trope. I love me some Stephen King. This is one of his lesser known books. In this book, there is a girl who goes camping with her mother and brother, and they go on a trail, and she has to step off the trail to go use the restroom, and her brother and mother are arguing, and so she doesn't want to interrupt them, so she just goes off the trail by herself and gets lost. The book is about her survival in the forest of Maine, this huge, vast forest. In one scene, she finds shelter in an abandoned truck, and she wakes up in the morning to find that a bear has been sniffing around the truck and left like bear prints and stuff. Like, it's creepy without being supernatural. It's just a young, like 11-year-old girl lost in the woods and what she has to do to survive. And it's horrifying in a very real way. The second book trope that I'm going to do today is demons. And this is one of my least favorite tropes, simply because I do have such a phobia of this. I don't read very many demon books, but I do have 6 recommendations for this trope as well. The first one is The Dark Corner by Christopher Pike. It's part of the Spooksville series. In this book, there are some friends that investigate a cemetery and get sucked into an alternate universe. Think like Stranger Things, where there are copies of them, but they're demons. For a middle grade book, it's actually quite creepy. They have to stop the demon versions of themselves from going to our plane and taking over their lives and harming the ones that they love. The next recommendation is Suburban Hell by Maureen Kilmer. And everybody raved about this book, and they kept saying it wasn't that scary. It was spooky. It wasn't terrifying. This book literally kept me awake at night. And yes, it could just be my phobia and just me being a big old fraidy cat. I don't know, but this book terrified the hell out of me. in this suburban neighborhood. There's a group of friends, and one of these friends gets possessed, and these other friends have to figure out how to help her. And again, it is terrifying. Some of the scenes in this book, some of the things that the character did, horrifying. So go into it knowing that. Again, I might just be a big fraidy cat. The next recommendation is a Grady Hendrix recommendation. Again, I love him. I can pretty much find a book to recommend of his for every trope as well. And again, his books to me are horror light. They have humor in them that keeps them light. But this one is going to be My Best Friend's Exorcism. And if you have not read this book, please read it. It's very 1980s nostalgia, which is just so good. And it's, again, a group of friends, and one gets possessed, and her best friend has to figure out how to save her. The 1980s nostalgia was so perfect. And the best friend relationship was so sweet. This is a really good book. And even though this is one of my phobias, I could handle this book. It had its moments, but I could handle this book. So the next recommendation is going to be Stolen Tongues by Felix Blackwell. Everybody has raved about this book. And it's good. Don't get me wrong. It is good. But it is not as horrifyingly creepy as it's being made out to be. Again, I could handle it. Were there some scenes that were like, ooh, yeah, but I could handle it for the most part. It didn't like keep me up at night or anything. But in it, there's a couple that goes to the mountains, and they're staying at this cabin, and something happens, and the girlfriend gets possessed, and they go home, and she brings it back with her, and it's like starts speaking in different languages, like weird shit happens. And it was creepy book. Don't get me wrong, it was creepy, but it's not as horrifying, keep you up at night like people are making it seem to be. I could handle it. It wasn't that bad. The next recommendation is going to be Come Closer by Sarah Gran. This is an interesting book. Most of these books, I would say, are told from the perspective of, oh, my best friend or somebody close to me just got possessed and I have to figure out how to help them. This book is from the perspective of the person being possessed. And for that reason, it adds a whole other layer of horrifying. It's her trying to figure out, is something supernatural going on? Am I possessed? What is going on? Or am I just going insane? Am I losing my mind? Neither option is good. This just gave a more horrific layer to the demonic possession story. The last recommendation is going to be A Head Full of Ghosts by Paul Tremblay. And I'm not a huge Paul Tremblay fan. I think there are two books of his that I like. I like this one, and I think it's called Survivor Song. There's a family that their teenage daughter is being possessed, and in order to help her, they get a priest involved and everything, but they also get a television crew to come in and film it, like Ghost Adventures, like a show like that. And the story is told from the perspective of the younger sister, and she's kind of left to fend for herself throughout all this. Her parents are more worried about fame and money. The older sister's worried about being possessed. The younger sister, the main character, is kind of left to fend for herself. And through this perspective, we come to realize that maybe her sister isn't being possessed after all. Maybe there's some manipulation going on. Maybe there's some mental illness going on. Or maybe there is something supernatural going on after all. So I hope you like these recommendations. I am so sorry that this couldn't be a Makeup and Books episode. My poor face would not allow that. My poor skin is crying. And PSA, wear sunscreen, folks. Now I have to live with the consequences of my poor decisions. But anyway, I hope you liked this video, and I hope you found some great recommendations. Leave your recommendations for demon stories and dark nature stories below. Tell me what you thought of my recommendations.